Hello, hello. Normally I do not stream on Sundays, but you know, imminent war, current war, I think makes an exception. Uh, Remember how there was like a certain leader that rhymes with chump who literally came back to power running on the issue of being against forever wars? Yeah, we all knew this was a lie with everything that's been happening in terms of their foreign policy, which is just imperialist aggression, that they've not been obeying the law with Venezuela or with the aggression against Greenland, what's happening with Cuba, all of this stuff. I mean, not to mention the genocide being funded in Palestine, that there's already so much imperialist violence, but this is very bad. What's happening? Uh, so this means we need to be calling our representatives. I know that they don't really listen to us. This is why sometimes democracy is a farce. uh, but calling them, I use the app Five Calls. This isn't sponsored, by the way. I just use that because I find it helpful. They have scripts for things. If you put in your address, it also tells you who your representatives are and the different issues that they speak to, like where it is in the legislative process. So that's really helpful. Emailing them, being at their offices, sending letters, being wherever we can to get this to stop. Because this is going to just be a replay of the Iraq War. And there was a girls' school that was struck. They're saying that they've found 60 people who are deceased. At least this is the latest of what I've seen. The people who claim to care about family and life, this is the policy of how, especially with the world reacting to what's happening, the difference between European powers reacting to the aggression against Greenland versus what has been happening with Venezuela and what's happening against Palestinians and what's happening in Syria, the bombing in Nigeria, and now bombing Iran again, like what happened last June. That when it comes to brown bodies, when it comes to people who are Muslim, people who have been colonized in the past before, they don't care. And this is why it's so necessary to continue the work of decolonizing the world, including like our minds, because this is colonizer behavior. That the fact that they're protecting their own, that they view lives in a hierarchy of human dignity in which they are at the top, and where other people's lives, namely people of color, especially if they are not Christian, that they are collateral damage for this industrial war complex. So we all need to be speaking out against this with our leaders, because unfortunately with the US empire, how this shit works, they're not going to stop until we make them to stop. And so ultimately, I think we do need a world strike. We've needed one for a very long time just to stop all this bullshit, but it's very difficult to get everyone organized. I'm gonna see, are there any world strikes that are happening? I just typed in world strike, and of course, the thing that shows up the most is strikes against Iran. So that makes sense, but Global Strike Strategic Plan. Oh, Air Force Global Strike. No. World Strike, Global Strike. So these mean very different things, but we're using the same words, which is they're using this to their advantage. Of like, oh, we're gonna co-opt the word strike. I mean, it's existed in many different like definitions for a while, but we're going to use this, and when we talk about a general strike or world strike, it's going to bring up some of the most violent events and suppress organizing content and entities. So anyway, if you hear of people like organizations or grassroots organizing about a world strike, do let me know so that I can like funnel people to them. I'll keep looking for this as well, but do fill out the World Strike form that I have in the Twitch profile. I need to update it to include like all of these like wars and AI and bullshit. I put it together very quickly. But anyway, sign it as a strike card to show that you're willing to strike once we get enough people, and also submit your demands of what that would look like, because what's the point in striking if we don't actually have demands to be asking for in which they must comply? That's the way we take our power back, not just by withholding our labor, but withholding it with specific asks in mind. Okay. I wanted to watch this Zateo coverage. This is from yesterday. So I know there have been some things happening since that I'll try to look up and provide as we go along. But this is what I want to go over today. Normally I start off with like a lighthearted hee hee haha type of video or content, but I'm also not able to stream as long today, so let's just get right into it.
For joining us, another Zateo Town Hall. Today, the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran, setting off a series of events that are still unfolding as we speak. One such attack by the Israeli and US governments killed over 80 students reportedly at a girls' school.
80.
Iran's retaliation included
So that's
attacks on
larger than I
UAE,
even
Bahrain,
first heard.
Kuwait, and so forth. Debris has endangered civilians in these countries. And now, Israeli officials are claiming that they say that the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is dead. History, as we see, is being written, and it's not yet clear who's going to be left holding the pen. We will be live for the next hour. Please feel free to share questions with us wherever you happen to be watching. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Later, I will be joined by Nagar Mortazawi and Trita Parsi, but first, I will be joined by my colleagues Mehdi Hassan and Swin Soub saying, Mehdi, how are you reacting to things? I know things are changing by the second, but when you first saw the strike and now, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I saw the strikes last night. I was in a hotel room in Atlanta heading here to Texas for an event.
Okay, this is a side note, and this is not as serious, but look at this color of this wall. That's really pretty. Oh. Interesting. Also peacocks. Daisy people, we love peacocks. I love that for us. Anyway, back to the seriousness. I just had to point out. I love seeing that. Her walls are like the exact same color.
And I wasn't sure what it was, right, Prem? Because a lot of the reporting, including from Swin, who's going to give us his take in a moment, was, is this going to be a smaller strike first and then they do a big strike later? Is this Trump's way of bringing the quote-unquote regime to the table, even though they were in the middle of negotiations? Even though hours before these strikes, the Omani foreign minister, the Omanis, for those of you who don't know, don't tend to talk very much in public. The foreign minister of Oman went on American TV and said, you know what? The Iranians have pretty much agreed to everything the Americans want. They've gone beyond what Barack Obama got from the Iran deal, and yet they still
in the middle of negotiations.
When they hear American officials
this is
saying
happening.
This was about the nuclear program, a complete load of bullshit. This is a huge attack. Trump called
The only way now for countries to have protection against American aggression, Israeli aggression, aggression against nuclear powers is for each country to develop their own nuclear weapons. That's just what is the only thing protecting people. And if this was obliterated, then how and why are we still attacking them? Where? Oh, were they doing this inside the girls' school where 80 people were killed?
Massive wave attacks last night. And Tom Cotton, Senator Tom Cotton, the very hawkish Republican chair of the Intel Committee, has said today this is an attack that won't end in days. It's going to last weeks. So we are looking at a major attack. I've always worried that a war with Iran would make the war with Iraq look like a walk in the park. I hope I'm proven wrong. Something you said, Prem, stuck out to me, which is, history's being written, but we don't know how it's going to be written. The problem we have, and I would urge all Zateo subscribers to keep this in mind who are watching right now, is the media are going to tell you all sorts of things about who's up, who's down, who's won, who's lost. It's meaningless. This is the first few hours of a major war.
We all lose.
Remember what happened after
because
Iraq.
it's
Remember
warfare.
George Bush standing on a ship saying mission accomplished. Remember the people who mocked some of us saying, see, it all worked out amazingly. We took over the country. We got Saddam.
Warfare by imperialist
Same with Afghanistan.
aggression.
Same with Libya. This early basking of triumph doesn't always last. And let's see.
To be clear, this is about regime change. This is about oil. This is about doing things at the behest of Israel, this government that is committing a genocide that the U.S. is funding to distract from the Epstein files. Because guess what? People have been calling more recently on a bipartisan basis, believe it or not, with American people, that Trump should be brought in and should testifying under oath to these committees, these oversight hearing committee people, so that they get answers. And guess what? The very next day after this was more public, striking Iran. Just to be clear, you have to have congressional authority and approval of the UN to go to war. And this really is the regime of, we're going to get away with whatever we can. These people don't stop until they are made to stop, because that is how fascism works, is that the cruelty is unending, that they don't stop unless there is military might stopping them, or until their means of production are destroyed or completely taken over or halted. Okay? So this is just the long and short of it. And it's to distract from all of these utter failures of also not only the president's completely unfavorable ratings and pollings of late, especially with his own coalition. He's losing his base, and they are intent on keeping the base. They are wanting to just cheat by co-opting elections, by starting wars, by trying to make it appear like they're more powerful than what they are, that they have more support than what they are, that they are buying up all of these media entities to control the information ecosystem, that this is also happening at the same time where the genocide happening against the Palestinian people is the historically most unpopular it has ever been. That Israel is losing much support, that even people who are right-wing and conservative are talking about not funding Israel as much. And by the way, because this has gone so unchecked with the right, there is there already has been rampant anti-Semitism, very genuine, dangerous anti-Semitism that is only being bolstered by this impunity of Israel with the funding and weapons of the US government, and now continuing this aggressive violence.
With American soldiers, Trump has talked about American soldiers losing their lives possibly. And I know my colleague Swin, I want to hand over to him, has just been reporting on that.
Okay, so when Trump announced this in the middle of the night in his stupid fucking hat, and he's now running a major regional bloodbath from the auspices of fucking Mar-a-Lago, his private
wedding venue
club in Florida, in the months-long lead up to this moment, he was briefed by intelligence officials and senior administration appointees repeatedly about the array of potential options and wargaming and gaming out of scenarios that the highest levels of the intelligence community, the Pentagon, and Trump's administration had done about, like, okay, if we go this route, if we go this route, if we take this military option or military option B, these are the ways that are setting aside everything else for a moment. These are all the different ways that there could be American casualties if you go ahead with any of these like arrays of options in a war with Iran, in a new war with Iran. The range and the gamut ran from a smaller number of potential U.S. casualties, military personnel and otherwise in the region, if this was going to be a days-long conflict, a weeks-long conflict, or if things spiraled and this became a protracted engagement. Obviously, the U.S. casualty numbers start to creep higher in these different estimates, in these different classified briefings. After all of that, the supposed peace president, the supposed ending wars president, all bullshit, we've known that since 2015, looked at all that and said, yeah, let's go ahead with it. It's okay. These American lives, which may very well be lost in these varying degrees of estimated numbers, gonna be totally worth it. So I can feel like a big man on the global stage with my latest horrifying air war above the Islamic Republic. And Donald Trump kind of acknowledged this after months of being briefed on these options and these potential American death tolls in his stupid fucking middle of the night speech, where he said, yes, our brave soldiers, some of them might die from this, but you know what? This is a noble mission and we need to do it, and we're doing this for the future, not the present. The Trump-Vance administration is trying to front run possibly inevitable stories about caskets coming home of dead American soldiers and trying to front run all these stories about grieving widows and grieving families because Donald Trump wanted to feel like a big man. I am even a little bit surprised that the president of the United States just came out and said that in his inaugural speech on this.
I know. It's like we shouldn't even be shocked at this point, but like that behavior, like we can't minimize how unusual that is to anticipate deaths and exactly get in front of them. And this is a way to distract from the bullshit of what is happening. I was going to say something else, but whatever.
So-called mission that, oh yeah, sure, that could happen. I don't think I hear presidents usually talking in that way when they plunge us into regional bloodbaths. But
well,
there you go.
I'm curious, if you have a sense from your sources.
Just like the callousness and disregard for human life is something that we already know, but it is just blatant in the open. And we have people in the country that are for this, especially when it is against brown people, against people who are Muslim. This fever dream that many politicians have had for striking Iran, that is also the fever dream of Israel. And now we are seeing just a complete, we already have been seeing from the US and Israel just a complete disregard for international law. But this is also extremely illegal. And the reason that Iran is a bigger country than what Iraq is. And they have more military might. They are not as easily swayed. And so that's what Mehdi was referring to in saying that it would make the Iraq war look like a walk in the park. But even with the Iraq war, they tried to manufacture consent. And because of all of the propaganda that that came after 9/11, that it had more support from the American people. This has very little support, and they don't care. They're going to try to get away with as much as they can.
You've talked to your point, this is something that generally would be something that would come out in a shocking leaked tape that the New York Times would report on in the midst of the beginning of an assault campaign like this. He went out and said it in his USA hat, mind you, at his Mar-a-Lago beach.
In prepared remarks.
Right, prepared remarks. And I might add also, just add to the symbolism, a week and a half after the Israelis, who he's working on behalf of at the behest of, killed another American. So I'm curious, did your sources have this sense of whether they thought that was strategic, that they were just going to be so explicit in saying Americans will possibly die from this?
Well, yes, in part because, look, they knew they would have to grapple with this publicly in one form or another, especially over the coming days and the coming weeks, largely because they have seen all of the same
I'm going
polling
to be working
that the
on
three of us
like
have, and that I think our
a
viewers have,
bracelet
which is
project while I'm watching
overwhelmingly
this.
the
I
American
need to be
public
doing something with my
do not
hands.
want this fucking war. They do not want it. Every single poll shows that a supermajority either are strongly or moderately opposed to it, or just do not support what Donald Trump, JD Vance, and the rest of this gang has just unleashed. So, look, Donald Trump's approval rating is hovering in disaster territory right now, right around the mid 30s. The Republican Party knows that they could get dragged down by this guy's approval numbers in the upcoming 2026 midterms. And they also know how unpopular military action against Iran right now is with American voters. And everybody knows how disastrously unpopular in an election year it can be if you're going about shambling about the Middle East or any other region, and viral images of bodies of American military personnel are being flown home to crying children and crying families.
Yeah.
So this is almost like a murder-suicide pact that the entire upper echelons of the Donald Trump administration are in with right now, where they know how sideways, politically speaking, not even talking militarily, but politically speaking, this can go for them very quickly, but they still are just gonna do it because the God King Emperor Trump feels like doing it, is going ahead with it. And yeah, there's just, even from the people in the administration, like the Tulsi Gabbers of the world, who are supposed to be fundamentally opposed to this stuff, they're kind of shruggy emojing it off. Donald Trump, the big strong man, he's got it with his sidekick, JD Vance. And to go back to something you were saying earlier, Prem, you were saying at the behest of the Israelis. Okay, yeah, there is kind of elements of where you can argue Netanyahu is trying to take the American government for a ride on all these kinds of different regime change actions. But at the end of the day, this is an inherently American mission. It has been in the neoconservative and particularly American Republican Party bloodstream for years, if not decades, to try to force a regime change war in Iran. And they finally got their man to help them do it, a mentally desiccated, elderly, racist game show host. Congratulations, Republican Party.
Yeah, Maddie, there's a few questions that
Amazing.
Firstly,
so well said, and just it's nice to see people actually be upset about this. That just helps us feel like there's some sanity out there, that there's like some compassion and care for human life. But so well said.
we talk about the question of public will. Mandeep K on Substack asks a good question here, which is, what evidence does a country have to show that an attack was imminent? It feels like USA and Israel, quote, say that an attack is imminent to back up their illegal attacks often, as we've seen before. So let's talk about the language of preemption and preventative strikes.
Yeah, it's a good question. We just run a piece at Zatea. If you're a Zatea subscriber, it's in your inbox, from Alonso Gamundi, who's a law professor in the UK, making the point that this war is inherently completely illegal, just as the bombing last year was illegal. Under international law, under the UN Charter, which only allows the use of force in a case of self-defense or if it's been approved by the Security Council, neither of those count here. It's illegal under the US Constitution, which gives Congress the power to declare war. Think about this, Prem. Even George W. Bush and Dick Cheney went to Congress to get approval to attack Iraq. Trump has gone even beyond Bush, Cheney, and the neocons in terms of his unilateral aggression. This is a man who spoke in front of Congress 3 days ago, right? 3 days ago, he stands at the State of the Union and he gives a epically long and boring speech that you and I covered in real time, 1 hour, 48 minutes. And he didn't mention he was about to attack Iran. He didn't mention there was a threat to Americans from Iran. So he had a chance to tell people there's a war of self-defense coming. It wasn't a war of self-defense. Reuters are reporting today that this decision was made weeks ago, that they were going to do this. And if you plan to attack someone weeks in advance, by definition, they're not posing an imminent threat to you. And it's not self-defense. And all this bullshit, people in the mainstream media have been using the phrase, preemptive war, using Israeli language. It is not a preemptive war. Preemptive war means someone's about to attack you, so you attack them first. There is zero evidence that Iran was about to attack anyone, that Iran has the kind of missiles that would allow it to attack the US, that it even has a nuclear weapons program. It doesn't. It always had a civil nuclear program, which the IAEA never said became a weapons program. Trump then bragged that he obliterated that program. It still says so on the White House website. So what nuclear threat were they trying to stop? I do want to pick up on something Swin said about, this being an American operation. A couple of things. Every Republican president does this, right? Every Republican president comes to office, cuts benefits for the poor, cuts taxes for the rich, raises prices, and then bombs a Middle East country.
Yes.
Ronald Reagan did it, George Bush Sr. did it, George Bush Jr. did it,
and then
Donald
leaves
Trump
and
has
doesn't
done
have
it.
to deal
Now,
with the
this is where
fallout.
it gets interesting.
And then a Democratic president has to come in and clean up the bullshit. That's always what happens. This is par for the course. Not like I have any love for the establishment Democrats whatsoever, but this is just part of the imperialist fascist agenda. It has been like this for a very long time. We've always been closer to fascism than any sort of socialism in the US.
Donald Trump is not just alone in that pack in the sense, as Swin so put it, mentally desiccated game show star. It's not just that it wasn't George Bush and Dick Cheney that attacked Iran. It was the guy from Home Alone 2. It's also the fact that he ran as the anti-war president, the anti-war candidate, the no more forever wars, the no regime change wars. Again, sorry to plug our excellent Zateo content today, but we just put out a piece at Zateo, listing out all the times Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard
welcome,
and RFK
welcome.
Jr. and Stephen Miller and David Sachs, all of these Trump people said, vote Trump. He's the guy who won't take us into any more Middle East wars. Kamala Harris will send your boys to fight and die, Stephen Miller said. Not us. Donald Trump said, there'll be no new war on my watch. He bombed 7 countries in 2024. He started 2025.
Guy
He
from
started
Home Alone
2026
too.
attacking Venezuela. And now here we are
Exactly.
with this major conflict in
It's
Iran.
a
We don't know where
brilliant
it's gonna
way
go.
of putting
and
that.
it was all a lie. And I'm sorry, I've got to say this. Swin said, we all knew. Well, many of us knew. But we also had a bunch of people on the right and sadly on the left too, who bought into this bullshit line that Donald Trump would be an anti-war candidate. He would be a candidate of restraint, of isolationism, Donald the Dove. It was bullshit. The people who felt it, the people who
Donald
felt
the
for it should apologize today
Dove?
or hang their heads
I have
in
not
shame,
heard that.
Because what Trump has done, as I say, in many ways is worse than even what Bush
Donald
did.
the
Bush at
Duck.
least turned up to Congress.
The
Saddam
lame
Hussein
duck.
at least had once had a weapons program that people were worried about. With Iran, it's completely illegal and unprovoked.
Yeah, Swin, I know you have to duck out soon. There's a question here from D.E. Niter on Substack. A few questions, but broadly, they're wondering, and I'm curious to ask you about this because I'm curious if your sources have given any good sense of this, of process of logistics. D.E. Niter asks, do we have a clear and attainable objective? Have the risks and costs been fully and frankly analyzed? Have there been other non-violent policy means that have been pursued? Is there a plausible exit strategy? Have any of these questions of actual, genuine care for how this happens been at least entertained?
Everyone
even by
just
the
laughs
good
because
faith
they all know
people
that
within
it's
the
not
administration,
true.
or good faith people, I should say. What's your barometer on that?
The look on my face answers every single question that
Yes.
that user reviewer asked. But look, I will say this. In the run-up to this, and we did reporting at Zadeo.com on this over the past couple of weeks, it was very hard to get senior administration personnel, or even Donald Trump himself, when other officials were talking to him about it behind closed doors, to say what the mission would be. Is it going to be regime change? Is it going to be pseudo-regime change? Is it about the weapons programs and other military capabilities? What is the end game here? There was barely even an effort to coalesce around a single message, either publicly or privately, among the Trump-Vance brass about what the end game and goal looks like here, how long.
Not shame on you at all. Normally I don't, but just
here.
because
One
this
person,
is
one
happening
Trump
right
advisor
now,
I was talking to for some reporting we were doing days ago,
I
when I just straight
am
up asked,
covering
okay,
it.
what is the
Welcome.
mission
Good to
here?
see
What
you.
would it be? The response was, and I quote, "What mission?" It's so vibes based and so amorphous about like, okay, this is about projecting American power, according to them. Okay, fine, but beyond that, why are you doing this besides trying to show how allegedly tough a guy Donald Trump is and about how you shouldn't fuck with him? Like all of these, we were comparing this
Draft
to Bush.
dodger.
Right. And we've been doing plenty of comparing this to the atrocities and scandals and abuses of the Bush era. And I am not by any means handing it to the Bushes or the Donald Rumsfeld or the Dick Cheneys of the world, but they pretended, at least, put a patina of like respect to process or democratic value.
Exactly.
Or
World War
III,
Epstein
administration, things that sounded pretty
Epstein
at the time.
War,
But I think
the Trumpstein
a lot
Wars,
of people on this chat right now
Trumpstein Yahoo Wars.
That it was just a lie, that the words were nice, but look at the actions, look at the bloodbath.
I appreciate
Here you have the bloodbath,
Mehdi Hassan, exactly.
And
Zateo really is a voice of sanity right now.
That you did not
actually calling it like
the
it
Bushes
is,
and Cheneys, as
which I appreciate.
And mixed into that, and obviously the Bushes and the Cheneys were plenty lawless, and mixed into that, you have this just jettisoning of even pretending to care about norms or spreading democracy or any of this bullshit that American imperialists are supposed to pretend to care
You
about.
open to it by mistake.
So
I mean,
some
I'll take it.
hardened leftists might want to be cute with their argument about how, oh, well, isn't that better? It's unvarnished. The American empire is no longer pretending to care about you, blah, 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 blah. I would argue, and I will leave this to you guys to discuss since I have to jump in just a moment, I would argue no. In every single metric, it is worse, both substantively and rhetorically.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you for
I think
that
that's the
thought,
first
Swin.
There have been no
Thank you so
reasons
much.
given.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you
Swin.
spending your time.
They didn't
Um,
even
See you, Swin.
pretend to do
I'm
this
just
in a
gonna pick up on
democratic
what Swin
manner.
said there
Please go
about
for it.
the.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with Swin in the sense that the burning down of international law and norms is something that will be felt by the world for a long time to come, and I don't think we can
Yes.
overstate that. Israel in Gaza, now Trump in Iran. He mentioned the projection of power, wanting to look like a tough guy. There was a neoconservative writer, Michael Ledeen, he's since died, but he said around the Iraq wartime, he had a quote attributed to him. He said, every few years, America should grab a small, crappy little country and throw it against the wall just to show the world we mean business. And unfortunately, that is what a lot of American presidents, not just Republicans, but mainly Republicans, have done.
Yes.
And that is clearly what Donald Trump is doing here. I mean, we could talk about the goals. The goals are Trump wants
And
to
it
look
will be
strong
up
and
to
distract from
everyone
his
else
bad
to
ratings.
fix
By the way,
this
you know
mess.
Who said that a president will attack Iran because his ratings are low? Donald Trump did. About
Remember
Barack
how
Obama in
there
2012.
used to be a
Check out our piece
time
today where-
when like leaders, well, I guess it depends on the leader, but like, remember there have been times in the past where it was expected if you were going to war that your leader was on the front lines. Remember that? Or like their honor was at stake when decorum was a thing, of like, this is what we should be expecting of our leaders. But is it, of course we're going to have the draft dodger make it so that like his son is also a draft dodger. Like, we need to have a rule for all of our leaders that if they declare war, their children are sent to the front lines. If it can't possibly be that they have to be on the front lines, because that, I think that would hold people more accountable. Yeah, exactly. He's just trying to be tough and fascist and aggressive, and also do this at the behest of Israel and to distract from the Epstein files, who literally shit his pants. Yes, multiple times. It's such a literal shit show.
Have that tweet. It is obviously to do with his low ratings and unpopularity. A foreign war is always a good distraction. It's also obviously in Israel's interest to be doing this. This is a war on behalf of Israel. American interests. Americans are not gaining from this war. Americans who are struggling at home with grocery prices, gas prices, lack of healthcare, they don't get anything out of this attack. The Israelis clearly do. And of course, Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein is the elephant in this room. The idea that this isn't about distracting from Epstein, I'm sorry. Maybe that makes me sound conspiratorial these days, but I think everyone watching knows it's 100% true that Epstein is a factor in all this. This is a president who just 48 hours ago, there was a 24-hour media cycle about how the DOJ had covered up files in which a woman claimed that when she was a child, she was sexually abused by Donald Trump. Again, unverified allegations, but allegations that are in the DOJ files and that the DOJ covered up. So at a time like this, he suddenly goes and attacks abroad. Let's not forget Bill Clinton. attacked Iraq during the midst of the Monica Lewinsky saga. There is precedent here for American presidents using foreign policy, using the US military for distraction from problems at home. And I think,
Yes.
sadly, we have to recognize that point. The other thing I'd say about strategies and exit strategies, these people are ignorant, Prem, just like George Bush was. Months before the Iraq war, a bunch of Kurdish leaders went into the Oval Office and they came out and they told Peter Galbraith, an American diplomat at the time, that they were shocked that talking to George W. Bush, he didn't know anything about Shia, Sunnis, and Kurds in Iraq. This is a few months before the invasion. Bush had no idea about what Iraq was, demographically, ethnically.
Yeah,
And the same with
because
Iran.
they're
You had
really
Senator Mark
dumb
Wayne Mullen, Republican senator, on
intentionally,
CNN the other day,
so
and
that they
saying
can
that
do
Ayatollah
whatever they
Khomeini
want to
is still
people
alive.
and
He
not
thought the guy
care.
ruling Iran is the guy who came to power in 1979.
Dre
Ayatollah Khomeini
Dossier.
came to power in
No,
79,
who's Dre
died in
Dossier?
89.
Dossier?
The guy they claim, the Israelis are claiming right now, and it hasn't been verified that they've killed the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He came to power in 1989.
What do they
He's
cover?
been in charge for nearly 37 years. But this is the kind of ignorance. They don't have an exit plan. They don't understand the people there. They claim that a majority of Iranians want this. Well, let's see, because they said the same thing about Iraq. And my worry is, what is the blowback from this? Americans watching this right now here in the US, God forbid there are attacks inside the US, suicide attacks, bomb attacks, God forbid. Because that's what happened in the UK and the US after Blair and Bush invaded Iraq. And Blair and Bush were responsible for those attacks. They knew, they were warned by their intelligence agencies. If you attack Iraq, the Al-Qaeda threat will go up to your citizens. They were told that. I would like to know, was Donald Trump told that by the US intelligence community? Tulsi Gabbard's now in charge of that intel community. She's someone who's been anti-war for years, but won't quit. Even after he attacks Venezuela, even after he attacks Iran, she shamelessly will not quit on principle. So I don't know if we can trust anything coming out of the intelligence community right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Swin
They've
had
co-opted
brought up as
all
he's
of
leaving
these
this idea
branches.
That, at least the Bushes had
And
this
they're going to
kind of
try to
process
declare,
in some respect. Of course, there were other
make
places
it
they totally
so that
flouted
we
it.
won't
There were a
have
few
midterm
questioners,
elections
including,
because of
Mary
this
Breyer on
ongoing
Substack,
war,
bringing up
saying that
the
it's about like
Democratic
security or
response.
something.
And as we've seen a range of responses from officials like Zoran Mamdani and Ruben Gallego, who have actually been very, very clear and assertive in their stances in different ways. And then you've had individuals like Gavin Newsom, one of the Democratic leaders in the primary for 2028, that hedge much of their statements in these questions of process, and more specifically by first stating, we believe it was right to do so, or insinuating that, but this is
Yeah,
not the way to do it.
exactly.
I'm curious what
Which
your-
also, it usually only has to do with bombing countries full of brown people, especially if they are Muslim, and how this is usually like there's a reason why we saw this pushback against the European powers when there was aggression towards Greenland, and they are speaking in like not so strong of terms. They're very wishy-washy right now. Their lack of support for Palestinian liberation, the active funding from many European countries for the genocide as well. That it's like that they aren't speaking out against really what's happening in Venezuela very strongly. So she does some of the lesser talked about insidiousness of the country's elite. Oh, interesting. It was about Oracle being given the info of people on Medicaid. Oh my God. Then Oracle is feeding it to Grok. I think we need to destroy AI. That's my opinion. I think if it is not stopped, it will destroy humanity. But, we're already kind of on our way to doing that. So,
has been to the Democratic responses, and if there have been some that you've been fans of and ones that you've found to be troublesome.
It's a good question because, look, I feel sometimes like we're living in a one-party state. Donald Trump and the Republican Party control the House, the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court in some ways. And it does feel like that. But we do actually have an opposition party, folks. It's called the Democratic Party,
I'm going to have to
but
check
it's led by
out
two
Dre.
men, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, who in general are feckless, spineless, weak leaders. We know that. 65% of the Democratic base want to replace Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. They are useless people who write sternly worded letters when Trump does fascistic things at home. And on this issue in particular, they're useless because they actually agree with Trump. Let's not beat around the bush here, Prem. They support Trump's war. Chuck Schumer was attacking Trump from the right a few months ago, saying, Taco Trump, when will he stand up to Iran? So Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are very much behind this war, but they can't be seen to be behind this war. So they say stuff like, when's he going to come to Congress? When's he going to brief us? What's the exit plan? But they can't come out and say what happened was wrong. It was illegal. It was against American values, against the Constitution, against the United Nations Charter. It's a disaster for the region, another war in the Middle East. They're not saying any of that, although other Democrats are. Newsom, I think, will regret not taking a stronger line. If you're running for president in 2028, the Democratic base, I think only 9% of Democrats support attacking Iran. 9%, according to a recent poll. So people like Ruben Gallego, who is not a lefty, pretty centrist senator from Arizona, border state, Iraq war veteran, served in the Marine Corps. He came out today with, I think, the perfect line, which is Donald Trump ran on exposing pedophiles and ending wars. Right now, he's protecting pedophiles and starting wars. That is the line. You have it. You don't need to go get an expensive marketing firm to test out your strategy. That's
exactly.
The line you should be pushing from Senator Gallego in Arizona.
Imagine
yes,
if you actually
Ron
say
Khanna,
the
who's also
truth
running
and stand for
president, who's
something.
led the charge on, getting a vote in Congress to stop this stuff, the War Powers Act. Zoran Mamdani, who of course sadly can't run for president, mayor of New York, put out a very strong statement on international law. Zoran actually was one of the few politicians also to point out that the Iranian community in the US right now, wherever you stand on Iran, whether you're pro-intervention or anti-intervention, the Iranian community in America is, of course, not a monolith, has many views within it. But regardless, they must be feeling worried right now, not just about family in Iran, but what if there's a backlash in the US? We know that when there are foreign wars, you get attacks from right-wing bigots and racists on minority communities here in the US.
It's opening up
Mamdani,
permission
one of the
structure.
That's what make that point. The Iranian community will be safe in New York. He will go out of his way. That's an important message for American politicians to get home.
That's
But in
leadership.
general, the Democratic
To be
leadership
like,
has been a waste
I
of space
see the
on
people
this
that are
war,
being
just as they
affected,
were on the
and
Iraq war.
actually has a perspective of like, oh,
The Yojo
what is this like for
2011
people at
on
this
YouTube
time?
asks,
What could they be
why is
feeling?
there no support
Showing
of Iran from other nations
compassion.
in the Middle East?
Imagine
fear of war,
that.
fear of economic isolation, or both? And I'm curious, especially as we see countries like the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain also potentially in the crossfire, how do you think they're sort of navigating the situation specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the Middle East is a complicated place in general. Right now, super complicated. Those of you following the Saudi-UAE split that's going on in the region. Obviously, the Qatar plays its own role. Israel and Gaza is ongoing. By the way, we should do a shout out. We're very clear at Zateo that we won't ignore what's happening in Gaza. The Israelis are using this war to crack down on Gaza and aid going into Gaza right now as we speak. Of course they are. I think Middle East countries is a very good question. First of all, they all have different agendas. There was a time when the Saudis wanted the US to attack Iran. There was a time when they were saying, cut the head off the snake. Recently, those Saudi-Iran relations much improved. Qatar-Iran relations have always been strong, even though Iran attacked Qatar last year in a kind of symbolic way after they were attacked during the 12-day war by the US. They attacked a kind of empty base. I don't think it's helping the Iranians that
I'm
their
dreaming of a
obviously
Kat Abu
strategy
Ghazala
of hitting the US
presidency.
requires hitting
I
US
know,
bases
she would be
in
great.
Middle East countries. They've attacked
She would be
Bahrain
great.
this morning. They've attacked
She's
I believe,
been,
Jordan, the UAE, Qatar,
rising
Saudi.
in the polls
so that
in
doesn't
her
help them obviously win
candidacy.
friends in the region. But I guess they would argue
And
that's where
that's
American
not an
interests are.
accident.
We have to
She
hit back.
stands for
Nobody wants a war.
a lot
None
of
those
really
countries
great
want war in the Middle East.
policies.
If you know anything about Gulf rulers or any of the kings of Jordan and elsewhere, they want quote-unquote stability, which means they stay in power and there's no popular uprisings. They don't want wars. They don't want foreign-led interventions. They opposed, a lot of them, the Iraq war. And I don't think they want a prolonged conflict. I don't think Donald Trump wants a prolonged conflict, Prem. He likes this kind of performative, spectacular, go in, boom, 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 bang, 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 I win. That's what he did in Venezuela. I think
Yeah, the
Venezuela
recent
gave
debate
him
she
this
did
extra
against
boost
the
to do
other
this.
candidates
I think
was
he just
excellent.
did an interview with Barack Ravid of Axios, where he said, look, I can take it over, or it can be over in a few days if they do what I want. I think he sees it in a Venezuelan way, which is you take out Maduro and the rest of the government, they just bow down to you, and that's fine, I'll keep them in office. I don't think Iran is the same as Venezuela. And I do think, God forbid it, this could get much worse for everyone. If they have killed Khamenei, Ayatollah Khamenei, who, by the way, I just want to be clear here, this man is not just a political leader, he is a religious leader to millions of people in Iran and outside of Iran.
And outside
Many
of
whom
Iran.
fanatically follow him. You kill a religious leader, illegal to just kill heads of state and heads of government abroad. They're also trying to kill the president of Iran. But what kind of backlash is there going to be from that? Has anyone gamed this out?
What
What's
kind
gonna
of
happen when they start
precedent are
attacking
they
American
setting
troops and
for
American
killing
civilians
these
in
kinds of
response?
religious
Americans
leaders?
didn't sign up to get killed for Donald Trump's war.
And to that point, and to Swin's point as well, it seems like we're almost gaming this out more than the administration has. There's SARS3661 on YouTube and Anna Asp on Substack, who are kind of asking similar questions, which is about what could potentially come next. as in who. Oh, sorry, not SARS3661. I'll get to your question later. Wash Egg, sorry, on YouTube, who asked
Love the YouTube
essentially, indeed, what about who might come next? With regards to the Western attention and capture of Reza Pahlavi, to potentially other possibilities, like who do you think may rise to become the new leader if indeed the regime is overthrown? And Anasp also asks about just the heartless recklessness of this
Exactly.
attack
What
being
kind of
coupled
blowback
with
is going
this
to
other
happen?
task that some have of
This is
freeing
opening
the Iranian people
up
from what they see as
the U.S. and the rest of the world, but for that matter, for all of these attacks, and they'll use that to as an excuse to escalate.
But let me just say this. I can barely predict who's going to be the Democratic presidential candidate in 2028. The idea that any of us know who's going to take over Iran if and when this government, this regime falls, is absurd. Reza Shah Pahlavi, the Shah's son, based in the US, his supporters want him to come back. They claim that there's popular support for bringing back the monarchy that existed till 1979, that was backed by the US, a brutal monarchy, which was replaced by another brutal Iranian government, a brutal theocracy. But who knows? My big concern is that there won't be one singular government. My always concern has been, yes, what's happening in Iran is bad. I'm not denying that there are human rights abuses in Iran. I'm not denying that people were killed recently, innocent people. But the idea that you just do regime change, you click your fingers and everything becomes better, is just defied by all of the experience of the last 25 years in the Middle East, from Iraq to Afghanistan, to Libya, Syria in many ways, a prolonged
to
civil
anywhere.
war. Let's see what happens in
That's
Syria
not how
now.
regime change
Iran is
works.
a very diverse place. It is a very historic civilization. But what if it turns into a civil war? That's maybe what the Israelis want. They want to be surrounded by weak states that are all internally fighting each other, leaving Israel to dominate the quote-unquote greater Middle East. We saw what Mike Huckabee said recently. We saw what the Israeli opposition leader said recently. They're all fine with taking as much terrain and land in the region as they can get away with. So if they're surrounded by weak states that are plagued by civil war, an Iraq, a Lebanon, a Syria, and now Iran, great for Israel, not so great for the Iranian people. And what bothers me so much, if you're going to say nuclear, then say nuclear. Don't pretend this is a humanitarian intervention. Donald Trump does not give a shit about the people of Iran. Donald Trump is happy to deport Iranians back to Iran to be tortured. So don't give me that crap. Nigel Farage, we should say a word about the UK,
exactly.
the vassal state that is my other country, the United Kingdom. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, came out today, not a word of criticism for this breach of international law. Instead, he said, oh, if Iranians only gave up their nuclear program, it'd be fine. They've agreed. They've told you. First of all, it's not a nuclear weapons program.
Yeah, the response from
Second of all, they
Europe
agree with
is
Yamanis
so
that
shameful.
they will give up the enriched uranium. So Keir Starmer's lying. But worse than that, you have Nigel Farage, the Trumpist leader in the UK, saying, oh, we 100% support this war. Iranian refugees come to the UK, Farage will be the first person to kick them out. Do not pretend that any of these right-wing leaders give a shit about ordinary Iranians. They do not. Donald Trump does not give a damn about the people of Iran. And, to Iranians in the diaspora who are cheering him on and saying, you're our savior, I worry that you may come to regret that position. Donald Trump tends to disappoint and screw over everyone who's ever had faith in him. So let's not pretend. And by the way, my last word on this, you want to save people from a repressive dictator? Best not to blow up schools full of children on the first day of your liberation war, which is what they've done today, outrageously and criminally.
We'll leave it there, Mehdi. Thank you so much for sharing your time. We appreciate it very much. Folks, Mehdi and Swin, of course, will be providing the all-star coverage that you know them to provide, so please continue to support and subscribe to Zateo. There's so much more to come. We're going to stay on this as much as we can. We'll be as diligent as you all deserve. Next, we have two experts joining us to keep talking about this ground-shaking news. Firstly, joining me is Negar Mortazavi, editor and host of the Iran podcast and senior fellow at the Center for International Policy. And as well, we have Iranian-American relations expert Trita Parsi, who is also a co-founder and the executive vice president of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Trita, Negar, thank you both for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So, Negar, firstly, just to start out with the basics, and before we begin, just a reminder, folks who are just joining us, please, whether you're on YouTube or Substack, please feel free to share any questions you have. We'll try to get to as many as we can. We have these two for the next half hour, so we'll try to get to everything that we can speak to. So thank you so much for being here. Negar, first of all, what was your reaction when you first became aware of the strikes earlier today?
Well, I actually heard sort of the rumor or the buzz last night, as I'm sure Trita was also hearing. I mean, we had been hearing about it for a couple of weeks, or sort of the deadline, the TikTok that was getting to this point.
Okay. I need to head out, but I think I may stream later to finish this. If there's a protest near you, find one. We all need to be pushing back wherever we can right now. Anyway, I may or may not be on later. Thanks for being here. I will for sure be on tomorrow. Alright, have a good rest of your day and evening. Okay, bye.